It's time for the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Each week, Trading Stocks Made Easy demystifies stock trading and investing so you can profit big. And now, here's the host of Trading Stocks Made Easy, the wealthy investor, Tyrone Jackson.
Well, hello there. It's Tyrone Jackson, the wealthy investor, and I want to thank you for joining me for yet another stunning episode of Trading Stocks Made Easy. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different because I'm actually going to take you behind the scenes and I'm going to talk a little bit about my wealth, my journey, and my experience to success. So as we go behind the scenes, there are times where it might get a little raw. But I want you to see that all that glitters is not gold, and any guru who you may be listening to, following, or tuned into to get a form of instruction has their own journey. I have certainly had mine, and it has not all been pleasant. So, for our time together during this episode, I want to walk you through some valuable lessons, which most include inner growth, but have contributed to my outer success. So today, I have a life that shines. I have multiple homes, multiple cars. I live in 2 cities at the same time, which I got to tell you is not always easy because I can buy something in one city for, let's say, the kitchen, and then I can think that that same thing was bought in the other city, and I have what's known as rich people problems. I also fly in private jets, which I started about a year ago. I joined a private jet club because one of my students says you should really be flying privately. And I love flying privately. I'm in a club, so I get to see the same people over and over. Turns out they're going from New York to Los Angeles constantly. And one of the other things about flying privately in private jets is, unlike flying commercially, when you exit the jet, your car is right there on the tarmac waiting to whisk you away to your next location. So I have all of these wonderful things in my life that I truly enjoy of a material nature, and I live each day without the fear that they're going to go away. Why? Because of the stock market, I've learned how to generate wealth and residual income for life. So as long as I'm trading, as long as I'm collecting dividends, and as long as I'm following wealthy investor discipline, my wealth will continue to grow. So it's great to be able to live life without the insecurity that goes along with success. But what I want to share with you now is it wasn't always that way. Now, a lot of financial gurus have these wonderful stories about how they were living in the gutter and they were homeless and life was really bad and they were at a bottom that was indescribable and some light came over them and they realized that they were going to change themselves and the world. Well, that's actually not my story. Many of you know that I was raised by a single mother in New York City who struggled each month to pay the bills. Even though she had a job, it was always in question as to how the rent was going to be paid, along with phone bill, groceries, and other necessities of life. So I always talk a lot about how people are programmed when it comes to money and financial success, because anybody who understands programming knows that it's not only just what people told you about success, but it's also what they showed you. It's not only what people modeled for you and told you about money, but it's also what they showed you. And one of the signals that I picked up when I was growing up was life was going to be hard. In fact, my mother used to say that to me all the time. You think it's easy making money? It's not. When it's time for you to get out into the world, you're going to see how hard it really was. You have to remember, like any child at 10, 11, 12, or 13, I'm a blank slate, right? I don't know anything about how to earn money and a paycheck and taxes. So I'm just taking in anything that is put before me as truth. I also grew up going to church every single Sunday, and I would hear things about sacrifices and how God sacrificed himself for the world. So if I wanted to be godlike, then I must sacrifice myself in some way, shape, or form. And if I was meant in this lifetime to struggle financially, then that's just the way it was, because someday when I go to heaven, things will be better. So for me, it doesn't have to be this way for you. For me, those kinds of messages and imagery were very, very powerful, and they left an impression on me. So rich people weren't always nice, so why would you want to become rich? And rich people are selfish and greedy. Now imagine me as a child feeling this desire for great wealth, and yet I have to battle the images and messages that are coming my way. Now, I realize as I'm telling you this, it's not only me. A lot of people hear these kinds of messages, and it tampers with your ideas and concepts about the world, especially when you're a blank slate. So here I am being raised by this single mother, and one of the things that I can recall from my childhood was about every 14 weeks or so, every 3 or 4 months, the doorbell would ring before my mother got home from work. And it was this guy who used to wear this black coat, I remember. He was short, he was very sweaty, and he shook a little bit. And he would always say, "Hey, hi, how are you? Is your mother there?" And I'd be like, "No, she's not in right now. She's out at work." And he goes, "Oh, okay, give her this." And he would give me a piece of paper to pass on to my mother. And this happened consistently. Like I said, this guy would show up at least 4 times a year. I never knew his name, but I never forgot how sweaty he was and that dark coat he used to wear. Well, it wasn't until years later in my late 20s that I realized that what he was actually handing me was something called a 72-hour notice, which means if you didn't pay your rent in 72 hours, you were supposed to get out. So when my mother came home and I said, "Oh, that guy was here today and left this piece of paper," she was immediately in a bad mood. I never knew why. I just went back into my room and watched television. But when I realized as an adult that my mother was receiving 72-hour notices, it really hit me later in my 20s because, well, I can't say that she hid it from me. I just didn't know what that was. So as an adult, I can only imagine what it must be like to have a paycheck that is short, and yet you don't know how you're going to pay the bills, and you're a single mom, so there's no place else to turn. Well, as it turns out, my father didn't live with us. My parents were never married, but he would come and spend time with me during the weekend, and then he would go back to his place of residence. Now, my father was very articulate, great storyteller, and fun to be around. He was also a great teacher. Obviously, I guess that's had some effect on me. He spent his life getting government grants. He was a great government grant writer for minority businesses. And I remember he would tell me these stories of how he got $1 million in a grant for that person, $700,000 for that person. Now, in the 1970s and 80s, that was a lot of money. And he also prided himself on the fact that he never took any of that money for himself, just a fee for writing the grant. And my father used to say to me, "You have to help people in life. That's what life is all about. It's helping people." Now, when I became 13 and 14 and 15 years old, there was something that went off in me that said, "Hey, I like this helping people. I could see how that would work. But if I get somebody $1 million, I feel like I should get a piece of that." I didn't say that. These were just the thoughts in my mind. So for me as a child, it was very confusing, right? Because I had the messages from church, the messages from my mother, and my father helping getting hundreds of thousands of dollars for other people and even millions of dollars and not taking any for himself. Well, you can imagine if you're trying to reconcile your money images and your money thoughts and ideas, that's a lot of confusion coming at you. Don't worry, this story has a happy ending, as you know from the beginning of the podcast, but I just want to try to give you some sort of context. So when I tell you I teach these ideas of changing your thinking and changing your life, you just get a sense of what my background was. Because although today some people may see me as a financial guru, the truth is I'm just another human being having an experience around money, wealth, teaching other people, and putting my voice out into the world. Well, as I move on, I thought, as I was in my 20s, well, I know I want to be rich. I've always felt that that was my calling and my true desire. But I started to do things when I started to earn money that was, well, a little on the destructive side. Things like buying things I couldn't afford, taking lavish trips, because I thought in the world of wealth, if I had things, I was rich. What I now know is if I have assets that are growing in value, that's what makes me rich, not first-class trips to the Bahamas. And I realized in retrospect, after a very deep period of looking into my life and my financial habits and my money beliefs, that by spending a lot of money, I was trying to make my mother right. In other words, on a very unconscious level, I was trying to prove that life is hard as she said it would be. And one night after a long walk, I realized I had listened to the story of my mother's life and her beliefs, and my beliefs were totally different, which meant if I disconnected my beliefs or detached from what she thought, and I started to tune into what I think, my life would be a whole lot better. Now, there's just one other thing I want to tell you about my early years, because this has shaped my wealth today and my ability to be the wealthy investor. And that is, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I'm just going to tell you, I have failed so much in my life, it has become routine. In fact, I know how to fail probably better than anyone listening. And my first experience with failure was growing up in my neighborhood around sports. I love sports, but as it just turns out, I'm blessed to be terrible at sports. So I was the kid who would be chosen last for the football team in my neighborhood because when the quarterback threw the ball to me, I would close my eyes, extend my arms, and hope that magically the ball would land in my hands. Now, if you know anything about sports, you're supposed to be watching the ball when the quarterback actually throws it to you. So closing your eyes, well, that's not going to help you be a great athlete. So I remember just thinking to myself growing up, I'm not very good at sports. And it's not that I was not very good, it's just that I had habits that good athletes don't have. When I became 24 years old, I was able to save up a sum of money to purchase a condo in a very lavish part of town in Manhattan called Tribeca. And it was amazing that I had saved this money, and I saw that developers were selling condos at a super discount rate, and they were holding the mortgage. And this was my opportunity to break into real estate, to become rich, because that's what I saw on an infomercial late at night. So I buy a condo. I didn't do the math correctly. You know, when you buy real estate, you're supposed to rent it out to someone else. They're supposed to cover all fees in their rent. That includes the mortgage as well as the maintenance. Well, guess what? When I rented out my condo to someone, I just took their rent and it didn't cover the maintenance and the mortgage. Now, I did this deal with a partner who was just as hungry as I was to get into real estate. Well, guess what happened after about 2 years of owning this condo? We weren't able to make the payments because we had to make up the mortgage payment out of our pocket. Generally a bad sign, a bad financial habit. My partner said, well, I can't continue. You can have the place on your own. And he signed it over to me for $1. Well, in less than 2 years, I wasn't able to make up the shortfall on a monthly basis, and I had to sell that apartment back to the developer at a loss. That was failure to me because I had the pride of owning this beautiful condo at such a young age. I was on the fast track, except guess what? The math didn't add up. So I had my failures in sports, my failure in real estate the first time I tried. Now, here's the funny thing about failure and me and success. Because I felt like I was failing, and in some cases, I was not achieving the goal that I had set, which was to be enormously rich initially through real estate, I felt like I was a failure at several things almost all at the same time. In other words, I can go back to my history and I could find everything that I was not good at. Now, when I had a shift in my money beliefs, one of the things I realized was I put a list together of all the things I was not good at and then what I would do better based on what I learned from that experience. And because I was able to list all of the things that I failed at and all of the things that I would do better, I was actually finding the keys to success. So, for example, remember how I told you I felt like I wasn't good at sports even though I loved it? I wasn't good at pickup games in football even though I loved it? Well, what I realized was if I follow the ball that the quarterback throws to me and I keep my eyes open, there's actually a technique for extending your arms just at the right time to connect with the ball while you're moving. You could catch it and you could run towards the end zone. And guess what I started to do in my adult life? See, I was able to decode all of the reasons why things didn't work out. And while going through the process of decoding them and listing what I would do better based on what I was learning, I would actually get better at things. So guess what happened in my life when it came to money? I made a list of all of the entrepreneurial ventures that I was in where I had failed, and the reason why I thought I failed at those tasks. Well, when I was able to list the reasons, I was able to find the habits that would be positive. And that changed my life. So most people who you see before you today as an authority, as an expert, most of us have failed multiple times, time and time again. And that is how you learn how to have compassion for others and teach people a path of success, because generally you have failed so much. Now, am I ashamed to share some of these failures with you? Not at all. It makes me who I am today. In fact, it makes me great at being able to help you because I've been there. So I'm just going to ask you for a moment, when you think about the areas in your life when you've been unsuccessful, my question to you is, what did you learn from that? What would you do differently if you had a second bite at the apple? Well, along my journey of decoding my failures so that I could find the keys to success, my father, who was in his 80s at the time, said, you know what, you've tried this real estate thing, but for some reason you strike me as a stock market guy. I said, really? Because my time with my father was obviously getting shorter. I knew that. He lived in senior citizen housing. I would go spend time with him every month, and we would just talk. And I knew that changed his world, and it certainly changed mine. And he said, you know what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to get you some books and tapes. I want you to learn how to trade in the stock market. When you come see me next month, I'm going to have a whole box of stuff for you. And I said, well, okay. And it was that material inside those books and tapes that began to explain the stock market to me in a way that wasn't complicated and that would allow me to generate first thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per month, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. You see, I was ready for the stock market because I had done enough inner work to find out why I, quote unquote, failed so much. So all I had to do in many cases was do the opposite of what I had learned. I shared with you just a few minutes ago of how I wasn't successful in real estate. Well, I actually became very successful in real estate because I stopped buying high-priced real estate and I started buying lower-priced real estate where the mortgage could easily be covered with money that I was generating from the stock market. So you see, I was able actually to pay off mortgages sooner just by correcting that habit. Sometimes when you think you're failing, you're actually growing, as long as you don't miss the lesson. So today, when I tell people to just keep an open mind, it's not out of a cute seminar thing to say, it's out of experience. Because I never thought that I'd wind up being Tyrone Jackson, the wealthy investor, hosting a podcast that's heard by you week after week and all the way around the world. The reason that I'm able to teach people with compassion and love is because not only am I a compassionate and loving person, but it's because of my failures or my growth experiences. You see, today I don't really feel like I failed. I just have had experiences that have taught me how to be successful. It's that shift, that change in attitude that's very, very, very powerful. So today, to have the life that I have required a shift in my thinking and my willingness to see my past mistakes as opportunities. When you shift your focus and you shift your perception of the past, your future has to change. Back in a moment.
Want to increase your stock market trading profits? Then you need to start your monthly membership to WITradeschool.com right now. Don't know which stocks to choose for trading in today's market? No problem. Just follow Tyrone Jackson's hot stock picks inside WITradeschool.com. At WITradeschool.com, you can also follow Tyrone's weekly stock market tutorials and investing advice. Plus, each week you can submit your trading and investing questions directly to our staff, and Tyrone will answer them as part of our weekly video Q&A sessions. Begin your membership right now and you'll get instant access to WITradeschool.com's video library. That means you'll get to know all of Tyrone's major and minor trading strategies, including covered call writing and volatility trading for fast, sexy profits. Tyrone Jackson, the wealthy investor, has helped his students earn thousands of dollars per month trading stocks online from home. These are people just like you. In addition to a successful podcast, Tyrone's editorial content has been featured on CBSMoneyWatch.com, NASDAQ.com, and YahooFinance.com. So what are you waiting for? Follow Tyrone Jackson's red-hot stock trades and investment strategies today. Don't wait. Start your monthly membership at WITradeschool.com right now.
And welcome back. Today's episode is all about going behind the scenes so I could share with you a little bit about my process. You get to know me just a little bit better, and you see that in order to become successful, I've had to have my growth experiences, or shorthand, failure. Today, I take a lot of pride in how many millionaires I've made in the stock market by teaching them the wealthy investor approach. And by the way, how do you think the wealthy investor approach to stocks got refined? Well, I had to lose money in order to learn how to make money. So when I talk to you about volatility trading, buying a stock on a 1% up day, setting an automatic trade trigger so that those shares are sold when the stock moves $1 or 50 cents, that is a system that has been proven over time. When I tell you when the stock market is rocky and you want to sell more in the money calls than out of the money calls, that system is proven over time. The benefit is you don't have to lose as much money in the stock market to learn what works because, well, I've already done that for you. What I have found and what I've learned from teaching is a wonderful saying that I once heard, which is teachers always teach what they need to learn most. That most people can be very, very successful at the stock market as long as they change their money beliefs. When you change your money beliefs, it opens the door to the world of opportunities. Now, many people have stopped me on the street and say, I love your podcast, or come to a live event and say, I feel like I know you. And I understand why. Because I'm not just a financial guru. I'm a person who's had their challenges, but I've learned lessons from each time I did not hit my goal. In fact, I am so good at failing now. I fail really quickly, and then I can make the adjustments faster than the average person because I've turned failure into a process that works for me big. So no matter what you've done in your life that you're not satisfied with, it can all be changed from this day forward if you learn how to view your past failures as a learning opportunity and willing to embrace the lessons that come from failing so that you can move on to financial success that's even bigger than you can imagine. So I want to leave you with this episode, as I always leave you in one of these self-reflective episodes, by asking you, what do you really want in your life? If money weren't an issue, what would your average day look like? Where would you vacation? And most importantly, who would you help? You see, with a financial education and learning how to trade and invest in the stock market for monthly residual income, not only can you change your world, you can change the world of other people around you. Hey, listen, I hope this episode has given you a little bit of insight into my journey and how I've quote unquote failed so that I can help you. Each and every day, I list at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. Why? Because gratitude makes your blessings grow and multiply. I am grateful that I've had this time with you, that I'm able to share during the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast anything that gives you a little bit of insight into a bigger, better, and wonderful financial life, because that's what the Wealthy Investor Program is all about. This is Tyrone Jackson, the Wealthy Investor, saying I'll see you right here on the next episode of Trading Stocks Made Easy.
You've been listening to the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Be sure to rate and review our show on iTunes. While you're on iTunes, be sure to click the subscribe button and you'll automatically receive our next episode.